Now answer me this, smart guy. If the sun and the moon are inanimate, why do they always have faces in art? Hey everyone! The sun and the moon are two large astronomical objects that are plainly visible from our planet. But that's boring. So people all across history have given them little faces and recognizable iconographies, which now we will turn into the basis for a couple spec Evo creatures. Please like, hype and subscribe if you'd like this video to rise high. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Many types of unknown organisms have been witnessed by humanity, as attested by pictographic and archaeological records and countless illustrations left by cultures all around the world since ancient history. Creatures that seem as a facsimile of celestial bodies at a glance, their true nature only being detectable to the careful observer. While some superficial examinations were possible, enough to obtain a basic description of their physical appearance, most of these texts were made before we had the needed scientific methodologies and equipment to properly study them. That is no longer the case, and so our research center has managed to observe these organisms to a degree beyond anything that was possible before. Let us begin by taking a look at the solarans, Heliostelix fasciata, massive bioluminescent organisms that spend their lives floating leisurely in the vacuum of space. While they slowly drift along the blackened expanse of the void, they are functionally sessile, having no real means of propulsion. This, however, does not hinder their ability to feed and survive, as solarans, like many other predators we know, will not move towards their prey, but simply allow it to come to them. The internal enzymatic reactions of the solarans will produce high quantities of bioluminescence and heat, thus attracting many types of spacefaring organisms that find such conditions favorable to their own biological processes. Solarans will sense their approach through the highly sensitive tentacles that erupt from around their bodies, which will detect any kind of radiation produced by such organisms, especially electromagnetic radiation, which is one of the key forms of sensing and communication by many of them, such as flying saucers. Once their desired prey is within range, solarans will extend a special tentacle that will quickly lash in the direction its sensors indicate. Upon sensing prey has been captured, the tissues forming this tentacle will initiate a series of exothermic reactions that will instantly cook said prey, preventing it from fighting back or escaping. Afterwards, this tentacle will retract back into the dish-like mantle of the solaran, where this prey will be digested. A well-fed solaran will present darkened spots on its mantle, places where the bioluminescent enzymatic activity is overridden by digestive enzymatic activity. The phenomenon known as pareidolia, our tendency to find meaningful patterns on vague stimuli, has often caused observers to see faces in these spots. Of course, in the emptiness of space, it can take a lot of time for the light of solarans to reach prey, or for said prey to reach the solarans. For these reasons, these organisms have extremely long lifespans and low metabolisms, being basically adapted to hibernate in between meals, passively broadcasting their light until new prey arrives. By the same token, it is quite hard for solarans to find other members of their species in the endless void, and so they have developed two different methods of reproduction, which allow them to further their life cycles both in the presence and absence of potential mates. As these magnificent organisms drift through space, they will occasionally use part of the nutrients they have ingested to produce a volley of shining, comet-like gametes, which will be fired from their bodies in all directions. These gametes will travel for years on end, depending on the extremely hot surface to dissuade potential predators. And while some of them may end up crashing into another celestial body, the high amount of gametes released will ensure at least some of them will make their way to another solaran, or to one of their gametes. Once they do, they will combine with the other gamete, thus kickstarting the formation of a new organism with the combined genetic information of both parents. Should the gamete reach an adult solaran instead, the solaran will catch the gamete and store it inside its mantle, allowing it to combine internally with its own gametes before releasing a new organism. Alternately, Solarans can also produce clonal offspring with a genetic composition identical to that of the single parent. These larval clones will travel independently until the chemical reaction that propels them runs out of reactants, upon which the drone will develop into a new Solaran identical to its parent, thus creating more chances for the offspring of this lineage to find and recombine with other Solarans. Fascinating organisms, but far from the only inhabiting this void. Let us now meet a species that stands in sharp contrast to the bright, aggressive Solarans, yet is simultaneously close to them in many different aspects of their life cycles. Selenomorpha coniophaga, the lunelians, or large, spherical organisms that may, at a first glance, seem similar enough to the Solarans, but their behavior betrays a very different biology. Lunelians are much more active, not attracting prey to themselves, but actively propelling themselves through the void in search of their source of sustenance. Cosmic dust, meteoroids, and most forms of inorganic debris found floating in space. They will detect this debris thanks to their primitive, unrefined, but effective photosensing cells, which are arranged around their bodies, and will slowly float towards this debris in order to catch it within the craters that litter its surface, actually deep feeding pits. These pits are lined with constantly moving cilia, which will grab any debris they come in contact with and drive it deep into the lunelian's body, where they will be filtered and digested. The waste products of this process will be expelled through the same craters, propelling the lunelian in the process. The similarity leading to the belief of common ancestry between the Majora and this species. Being much more active than their counterparts, lunelians are much more likely to find other members of their own species as they travel through space, and upon detecting the presence of another member of their species, will initiate the release of gametes from specialized pores located at the edges of their ciliated feeding pits. These gametes will be exchanged between the individuals equally, as the species, similar to Solarans, has only one biological sex, meaning all individuals produce the same type of gamete and are capable of producing offspring from contact with other members of their species, a strategy that helps increase the likelihood of successful procreation in this unforgiving environment. Lunelians can also reproduce asexually through budding, similar to the fission of animals such as starfish. As they constantly travel among clouds of debris to feed, they are always at risk of hitting something too big for their pits to digest, or, in more dramatic cases, being ripped apart by predators such as Ghidoras, and such impacts will cause the spongy tissue beneath their outermost layer to crack, breaking off chunks of the lunelian that will float away on their own. Fortunately, given the lack of vascularization or a liquid medium inside the body, or tissue specialization in this area, such events will not severely harm the lunelian, and the chunks of tissue, upon being isolated, will begin differentiating into a new, clonal organism of its own. Juvenile lunelians, formed through both sexual and asexual reproduction, are characterized by their elongated crescent shape, which helps increase their speed while maximizing their food capturing area during these initial growth stages, but will eventually grow into the round shape that characterizes adults. Further differentiating them from Solarans, the surface of lunelians is not a lethal furnace. Any organism capable of outmaneuvering its feeding pits will find itself in a place that is, if not exactly nice, certainly much more welcoming. The outer body layer of lunelians constantly secretes a fatty byproduct of their digestion, which, based on its appearance, has been termed as lunar cheese. This substance will act as the substrate that allows the growth of the spores of small, plant or moss-like organisms, which are transmitted vertically from lunelian to lunelian, commensals that will feed on this lunar cheese. Inoffensive in small amounts, but if they grow too far and begin covering the feeding pits of the lunelian, they may put this mighty organism at risk. There is little lunelians can do to get rid of the moss, but luckily its presence will not go unnoticed, attracting the attention of the moon rabbits, spacefaring organisms that constantly move around to feed on similar types of organisms, its digestive system burning them up in a way that renders the matter of biochemical compatibility meaningless. Fascinatingly, while lunelians lack the impressive external appearance of the solarans, it is known that they have their own way of impacting life on our planet in ways that seemed, in past centuries, to be the result of supernatural rather than natural phenomena. As we now know, as a result of the constant movement of the cilia and the gas within the organism, lunelians constantly produce a low humming infrasound when in contact with a proper gaseous medium, such as our atmosphere. This accidental byproduct of their anatomy, while not useful to the creature itself, is known to be audible to some animal species, such as canines, which are known to be severely stressed by its presence, constantly howling at these moon-like organisms as a result. While inaudible to humans, we are still capable of sensing them to a degree, and the presence of lunelians in our atmosphere has been known to cause terrible anxiety and distress in sensitive people. Now, the reason we are studying these two beings together goes beyond the superficial similarities they share, as, even in the vast emptiness of space, relationships between vastly different lifeforms are bound to be formed. After satellite-enhanced observations, we discovered lunelians to have a commensal relationship with solarans, constantly orbiting the shining predators to take advantage of the warmth they produce, and scavenging of the bits and pieces left of any prey the solaran consumes. This light will also attract the presence of moon rabbits, further helping the lunelians stay healthy. But should any of these decide to leave the safety of their host at a bad time, they will end up falling into the grasp of the solaran to be devoured. And that's it for speculative biology look into those suns and moons with faces that show up in a lot of art and media. That's the formal name, by the way. And big thanks to Alec Foisey who commissioned this episode. The concept this time was, I feel, rather self-explanatory. What if those classic depictions of suns and moons were mostly faithful representations of organisms that actually existed, face and all? And how could such organisms have lifestyles and cycles that resembled the properties of the real-life astronomical bodies they are representing? Luckily, Alec came up with a real solid concept that formed the basis for these beasties, and from which all we had to do was adjust the funkier parts about how an organism lives and functions in the vacuum of space, something that is always fun to do. The fun extra details about the biota of the moon were also fun to add, including references to rabbits on the moon and the idea of the moon itself being made of cheese, which is apparently supposed to be green. Huh, you learn something every day. All in all, a very fun concept to work out, so I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And as always, big thanks to everyone who wanted to see it. And let me know if you can think of any other celestial bodies or weird medieval art we could reimagine someday. And also, thank you to our researchers and research associates who support us through Patreon and YouTube memberships. And, once again, to Alec for commissioning the app. Remember, you too can join in if you want to support our channel. You'll even get some nice perks along the way, like seeing all of our creatures and videos ahead of time. Or you can also like, subscribe, or write a comment telling me any type of creature you would like me to give the Spekibo treatment in the show. Any of those really help the channel a lot. Thank you all for watching, and see you next time on the Speculative Wildlife Research Center.